Hey, thank you for joining me for another episode of Racking Up Rentals. Show notes for this episode can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E205. If you could take just a half a second and hit that plus sign or the follow button or the subscribe button or whatever it looks like and reads on the platform you are using right now, I would so appreciate it. Of course, that makes sure you don't forget or miss anything that's coming up, but it also sends a secret little signal back to those platforms that you are watching and listening, and it makes them want to spread this show to other people. Thank you so much for that. Onward with today's episode. And you know what? I know you've heard me say it before, but I got to say it again. One of the absolutely most rewarding and enjoyable experiences of being a coach is seeing your students do great things, to take what they have learned, they committed to learning it in the first place. They ask good questions, then they go out into the world and they apply it, and they come home with a deal closed. And this is another one of these great stories that I just love to share. This is a great student and client named Tom, who is in New York and went out and found himself a deal that he could sit down with the sellers in their home, relationally negotiate, listen for the clues of seller financing, put the deal together and get it closed, and now have another element of his portfolio, but this thing that's got some really great expandability and upside, and that's going to be an exciting thing down the road for him in his portfolio as he continues to make it worth everything that it can be worth. So without further ado, we're going to cut over to the audio and the video of that interview with Tom right now. Okay, Tom, thanks for being here to talk about this awesome deal you just did.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, congratulations. It was just last Thursday, is that right, when it closed?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. And tell us about give us the profile of the property.
So it's a 3-unit west side of Buffalo. I believe it is in the path of progress, which was very interesting. Pretty well rehabbed already. What really caught my attention on this property, though, was the garage that's in the back. And it is a massive 1,500 square foot garage, labeled as a 5+ car on the tax assessment website. So that I really saw as what really to go after in terms of with this property, just the rent potential and things of that nature.
Yeah. So, we call this in deals opportunity vision. When you see opportunity that maybe not everybody else does. So when you saw the garage and you started to salivate a little bit, what were some of the things, like, I guess just like a literal kind of sense, like what were you thinking? Oh, I could do the following with that garage to drive more income or value or whatever.
Sure. ADU did cross my mind. I think that might be a bit heavy in terms of finances that have to contribute to that. I'm also not even sure about the legality in terms of building code in that area, but it's on the back of my mind. But primarily for now, I've got some contractor buddies. I just know that they are in need of space to rent, for whether it's just equipment storage or even just kind of like half workshop, half stuff. It's a pretty large garage door. So I just know that they're paying top dollar for any storage space in that area. So that is my goal eventually.
Yeah. And what was the current, or the previous owner, I should say, what were they doing with the garage themselves?
Yeah. So he's actually has his stuff in it now. What I kind of used as an incentive to work with me specifically, as I was very open from the front, I'd be happy to just, you can leave your stuff there. They're trying to slow down, and I didn't want them to feel rushed to move. And he's got a bunch of stuff in there. And so I just made it very clear, like, I have no problem renting back to that space for as long as you need, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, or whatever, we can work on that arrangement.
Yeah. Awesome. Is it safe to say that customization, that tailoring of your deal in relation to like that concern in their mind, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to move all my stuff out of this garage. Do you think that was instrumental in the negotiation?
I definitely think there was some relief. I think it was very helpful, and it just made calmed them down a little bit in terms of like urgency and timing. So yeah, we'll see how long they leave their stuff there and want to keep going with that arrangement. So
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So to back up, tell us, how did you first connect with these people? Because this is an entirely off market transaction, right?
Yep, completely off market. I was in the deals workshop sending my letters. So this letter went out in about January. They reached out end of March, early April. I don't remember the exact date. And we met at the property. I did try to start with their living room, but they weren't totally open for that. But they were showing one of the apartments to begin with. So I said, let's just meet us there. And I did. It was a 30-degree, snowy kind of a day. And I met the husband first. His name's also Tom, which might throw off this conversation. But so, Tom and Linda. I spoke with Tom. We kind of did a quick tour of the property. Linda, he's more of the handyman and the maintenance guy, and Linda is more of the business leasing kind of a role. And so we met at the property in whatever that was, end of March, early April. And they kind of laid out a price, and in terms of the letter itself, they made it very clear that they get these wholesaler, we buy your house for cash garbage all the time. They showed me a stack. They said, well, we saved your letter, we put it off to the side. And I actually may have made a mistake in terms of pulling my list, which was kind of interesting. This was, they owned it free and clear, but they only owned it for 1 year. And I know that we kind of talk about aiming for longer ownership. And so I don't know if I made a mistake somewhere or I was just separately targeting higher equity. I don't remember. And but I just they just said, like, we 1031 2 properties into this. It's no mortgage, because I tried to bring up the mortgage payment. And they're like, oh no, it's fully paid off. I was like, oh, hello, seller financing. But I did what Jeff says, and cold stone face, don't react, just smile, not and so far so good.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I love the fact that, well, I don't love that they waited 2 months to get back to you, but I love the fact that you saw firsthand that when you send a piece of a marketing letter, basically, that doesn't feel so much like a marketing letter, but feels like a communication from a regular person, it's got a shelf life to it, right? I mean, if you had sent something and said, like, yeah, we buy houses, get a fast offer today, no one says, oh, that's cute, I think I'll put it in a folder. Like, but this is like, oh no, this Tom guy is real. Maybe in a couple months when the timing is better for us, we'll call him back. And so I'm so glad that you experienced that firsthand. And not only did you get a call back, but it was a very promising call back.
Yeah.
Okay. So you started the conversation in earnest a couple of months later. So in terms of price, what did they want kind of in the initial parts of your conversation?
They were satisfied with 418, which is actually what they paid for it 1 year prior. In the I'm going to call the heat of the 2021 market. So the fact that they were willing to stay at that same price and not expect any kind of additional, price raise, I was very comfortable with that. I did run some comps and look at the neighboring area. Again, path of progress. And so I was comfortable with that. The rents do support it. Higher end units. I'd call it an A- property in an A kind of neighborhood, which hopefully will become an A+ neighborhood. So I was good with that.
Yeah. And most people don't, I guess, have a change of heart on whether they want to be landlords or not in such a short period of time. What was it about just that 1 year that they sort of changed course?
Yeah, so with their story, they actually bought this property for that garage that I mentioned earlier. They needed a place for all of their stuff. They just a lot of it. And there's snow blowers, lawnmowers, tools. Just anything you can think. There was water tanks in there. Just anything and everything they've collected over the years is in that garage still. And so they said they bought it for the storage. The units itself were nice. They didn't have to do anything. It was already fixed up. But then I guess they had a change of heart at some point. They realized that this property was the furthest one out in terms of like a radius for their portfolio. And so with them wanting to downsize, they're in their 60s. I think they just realized how difficult it was to get out to that property. And it was a headache that they didn't necessarily want. So I don't expect them to come around too often and check on the garage.
Yeah. One of the points I think this illustrates, I think is really, really cool that we have to like, I mean, you could read about this or hear about it, but you have to experience it, which is not everybody makes the same decisions we make. Like for me, if I had a bunch of equipment that I needed to store, I might just say, I think I'll pay $250 for a storage unit. Not, I think I'll buy a $418,000 property just for the garage and then have these tenants there too. I just think that
Yeah,
it just speaks to like, we can't make assumptions about other people would do the same thing we would in that circumstance. And so I think it's a great way of just seeing how opportunity came up when you might not have expected it in that particular way or for that reason.
sure. It even makes me reconsider just my the criteria on my list pulling. I mean, again, like this was a short term ownership. By the time that letter went out, that was less than 12 months. So I have to really reconsider just length of ownership as maybe not even as a qualifier.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I want to get back to the seller financing. So
Sure.
you hear some of the things at the beginning that are like, oh, this could be possible. What happened that made it go from you realizing it was possible to it actually being, an option that you guys were considering together that they were seriously thinking could work for them? How did that happen?
So it was that first visit. We were standing on the lawn. At this point, Linda came over to say hi and introduce herself and vice versa. And we were talking about the price. And I did mention just, does monthly payments, still interest you with there not being any mortgage? And I didn't get the resounding like, yes, absolutely, like that's what we want, or I didn't get any of the other hints in terms of like capital gains bad or anything like that. But they were in agreement, and I guess to my disappointment, I think I was expecting more of a revelation or something, and it was just like, yeah, that's good for us, and we kind of never left that discussion. We never went back to like, oh well, we got a bank and pay us off, or just we want to be done with it. Like they were just open to it and acceptance, and I didn't want to change that subject, so I just kept going.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. I mean, we intentionally, I mean, thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs, we think deeply about this stuff and appreciate the nuance and how to bring it up and all that. But then on the other hand, like a person could overthink something, and like you were just like, hey, how does it feel to get payments? They're like, yes. And it was kind of as simple as that, right? You had some details to work out, but it wasn't this big scary, like, oh boy, I don't know if I can ask them. Oh boy, it's going to be scary to ask them for this. It's like, hey, how do you feel about this? Thumbs up. Oh my gosh, that was that easy. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to us about the terms themselves and how did you arrive? Like, what did you close at? And then how did you arrive at those things with them through the negotiation?
Sure. So we decided to meet the following weekend at their house. So I was pretty excited to actually get inside their living room, see what was going on. And they're actually house hacking. They live in a duplex. They got somebody above them, and their unit was just, I mean, top to bottom, very well done, which was great. Shows me the quality work, and Tom himself did all the work, which was impressive. And we went over. I think it was a Saturday afternoon. They cracked open a bottle of wine, and they offered me some. I didn't think I was going to stay that long, so I said no, thank you. Water's good. And they enjoyed themselves. We kept talking. We didn't even start talking numbers or the property itself for probably like a good hour, which was great. I tried not to bring it up,
Yeah.
as you teach us. And we actually did not come to terms at all that first day. I was on one end of the spectrum in terms of, low monthly payments. I didn't come out with saying this, but basically I was figuring out a 30-year term, no interest. I just came up more with the monthly payment and kind of left the lack of interest rate and stuff. I left that out of the conversation. And they were on the opposite spectrum of, well, they wanted 15-year. I think they came up with 5 or 6% at the time, which came out to like $3,000 a month. And it was just, we were just in total, we were $2,000 apart. And I tried not to panic. I tried not to get defensive or aggressive or anything. I said, I'm not sure how I can make those numbers work. I did to do some homework ahead of time in terms of number crunching. And I tried to explain, well, this is your total rent. The mortgage payment that you're asking for exceeds that. And I said, I can't, and I still have additional expenses. I still have utilities, insurance, property taxes, et cetera. And I was just like, I just don't know how to come to that agreement of that 3,000 plus number. And it was probably 2 hours at this point of back and forth, and including the social hour as well. And we kind of just stared at each other for a minute, and we kind of just casually said, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to come into an agreement today. But thankfully, Tom was still very positive, and he goes, but we'll figure something out. And I was like, okay, this deal's not dead. Thank goodness. And so I left. I thought about it. I adjusted my monthly, the number that I was comfortable with, and I came up closer to the $2,000 range. Still dealing with my 30-year AM and stuff, and I agreed to some interest. And so I called them up. I said, yeah, I can do 5%. At the time, we wanted 50,000 down, and still that 418 price point. I don't think they were super excited about a 30-year amortization, so they did want a balloon payment at that point. They were still saying 5 or 10 years. We didn't really lock it in yet, and so I agreed to that, but I wanted the 30-year am. To just made the monthly payment more reasonable. There was still some profit to be made, and so we said okay on the phone. I said, great, I will bring a contract over this next weekend. We did. More wine, more talking, which was good. And we filled out the contract together. We had some back and forth on the inspection. We did agree to an inspection. At that point, we signed. I sent it to my attorney. In New York State, you're required to have attorneys. Contracts are not in effect until attorneys sign off. They had their own attorney, which was like a family friend, and he actually corrected. It was interesting. It was almost like we had agents now involved, because their attorney was very aggressive. I don't know if it was their intention or not, but it was, the 50,000 payment. They, no inspection, sold as is, just a lot of other little things. They wanted personal guarantee, LLC guarantee, background, or not background check. They wanted credit report, like there's just all these things that we never discussed. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, well, don't panic, keep calm, don't get aggressive. I called them back up because again, I want to talk with the seller. And I don't know if Linda knew about this, but Tom was just like totally taken aback. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I didn't discuss any of these things. I was like, oh, and this is when I started to realize that I think Linda made more of the decisions versus Tom himself. So I was like, okay, I definitely need to keep Linda involved in this discussion. Yeah. I did get them to agree to an inspection. I said it was a snowy day on that first day, and that's all I did was like a 10-minute walkthrough. And I said, well, I can appreciate the market and how it is. I said, but I'm not a professional. We did a quick walkthrough. I said, and there was snow on the ground and on the roof. Like, I have no idea what is really going on. I said, I'm just not comfortable with that. And so they did agree to an inspection. We did that. So at that point, we had the contract signed. Attorneys did sign off, and that's when I came up with those original the terms that I talked about earlier. So we lowered we were still at 418. We were at 5% interest, 30-year AM, 10-year balloon. I did the inspection, came up with some things that were of concern, and I went back to them with a very expensive list of things that I think needed to be done. They were concerned, taken aback. I was like, oh boy, this is going to kill the deal. And then finally, we kind of met in the middle. They took 10,000 off. I kind of showed a little bit of my cards too much in the sense that I said I couldn't afford their $50,000 down payment and the 40,000 in repairs that I was anticipating, or at least I had on this piece of paper. And so we agreed to 30,000 down. So I got them to lower the down payment. I asked them why they were so locked into that down payment. And again, their attorney basically said, well, it costs about 25 grand to foreclose on somebody. I have no idea if that's true or not. So that's where so again, their attorney was really influencing the reason for that down payment. But I had 30,000. I was okay with that. I said, yes, I'll figure out the expenses part later. Now that I've actually had time to walk the property and check things out, I don't think I'll need to spend the 40 grand, which is good. Or at least I can buy some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we lowered the down payment, we lowered the purchase price based on that inspection. So, $800 well spent. Raised the interest rate just a touch to 5.5%. Didn't really make or break anything. I didn't care too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that 10-year balloon still. So I got 10 years to figure out what I'm going to do. And I figure, who knows? I mean, what's 10 years from now we're going to look like? I might not even own the property. It could be sold and gone. It could be,
yeah,
I could be dealing with bigger stuff, smaller stuff. I have no idea. So I'm
Yeah.
not too, initially a balloon, I guess, worries me, but I'm just like, 10 years is so far away that it's just not even tangible.
Yeah. You've got a lot of runway to figure out how to, refinance it, sell it, get lots of options in the refinance category, as well, bringing in new seller financing money from another property, using supercharged seller financing maybe on your next deal. That's kind of a complex way to do it, but obviously lots of other options too. Well, I just want to point out several things I just absolutely love about this story. I think you just totally nailed it. I love that you were tuned into the seller dynamics and understanding the role that each of the two people play, and that one's got this type of brain, the other one's got this type of brain, and so these types of things are going to appeal. This conversation maybe about this topic is going to be more of a Tom thing, this topic's going to be more of a Linda thing, etc. I love also it was kind of a collaborative experience. I love how you said it. We filled out the contract together. I think that's not just a matter of like pens and stuff. It's and logistics. Like, that's symbolic in the sense that like we arrived at this the solution together, and also not all at once. So much of real estate is like normal real estate is I wrote what I want, I pass to you, and then you write no on it and send it back, or you write I'll do this instead and then give it back to me. And that wasn't like this. This is just like an organic conversation, or as we call it, it's like a slow dance. But I love the fact that it was so collaborative in that sense. I love that what we would call the incremental negotiation that happened as a result of, there was even incremental negotiation up to the contract point, but then through the inspection period and the way that you presented those findings to them, and kind of you guys worked together to massage it and come up with something that felt equitable and fair to everything, and actually made the deal significantly better for you while still giving them a situation that they're totally happy with. So I just think you really handled that.
Thank you.
So well. Yeah. So I guess like my next or last question to you is, like, having gone through this experience now, you send your next batch of letters, whatever, next week, or you get a call next week from somebody you sent a letter to a month ago, or whatever it is. Having gone through this experience now, like, how does that change your, I guess, mentality or your confidence about what happens when the phone rings, and the way the conversation might play out? Or were there any beliefs that changed in you throughout this process?
Sure. So we actually talked about that on the deals workshop 2 or 3 weeks ago, the whole fear factor.
Yeah.
And I definitely view fear as false events appearing real, FEAR. And so much of what going through this process, any of what we were talking about that one day in deals, was just, it's all in my head. Just everything slowing me down and stopping me is just, it's all crap. And so I just need to keep pushing through. So yeah, just in terms of when that phone rings, like, that's just another opportunity. And maybe it's an opportunity that I get to, take for myself, or somewhere else, somehow else, whether that's wholesaling or flipping or whatever. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next call. I'll still have these fears and these other hurdles. That's not going away. That's all a big mental game I got to work on. But I do definitely want to emphasize, just to kind of change it up a little bit. The mortgage was only 2 pages. I couldn't believe it, compared to like the 100-page bank thing that I've done several times. It's just like, this is it. Like, this is the promissory note and mortgage. Like, I think it was 4 pages total, two each. So it's just like, this is short.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Yes. Pretty cool. And, I can't imagine you've ever, sat down at the mortgage officer's office at Wells Fargo and said, What do you think about adjusting the amortization here a little bit? How about a little interest rate adjustment? Maybe we can tweak the price too. You're like, that just doesn't happen, And
Yeah.
I just, also for context, for anybody watching this, in this moment right now, late June 2022, our market is starting to shift a little bit. Interest rates are going up, and the inventory is increasing a little bit, stuff like that. But in this time, like when you sent the letter, when they called you, this is very much squarely in the time when most investors would look at this and be like, no one's going to call you from your letter off market when they could just call a realtor and list it. No one's going to negotiate the price. No one's just going to go, sure, I'll do seller financing. Like all these things that people would say, that's impossible. You totally made it possible in an environment, especially when people just think that that's super unlikely. So I'm glad to see that you've gone through that experience and reinforced your belief now that these things are absolutely possible, regardless of kind of what the external market seems to be like.
Yeah. And even though I don't have the supercharged seller financing now, I mean, I've got 10 years to work on that. I mean, they could change their mind. And that's the other cool thing with that balloon.
Yeah.
I mean, my situation may be different, but their situation may also be different. I mean, they may
Absolutely.
realize like, hey, I'm not making 5.5% anymore on my money in the market or whatever.
Yeah.
When they turn 70 something and they may realize like, hey, I still want that $2,000 a month coming in instead of a big capital gain. Because I don't think they realize, since they told me that they 1031 into this, that I don't think they realize that they will have capital gains when they're get that big lump sum at the end. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got 9 years and 11 months to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that time too, you can be continuing to develop that relationship with them, giving them
Absolutely.
first class kind of customer service as the borrower. They have more properties that presumably could be on the table.
They have other properties, and I'm hoping I'm their first phone call. So yep.
I think there's a good chance
over.
there are. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And people tend to like, just because we're human, when we do something one way the first time, that tends to kind of create a template, right? And then we err towards doing it similarly the same next time, right? So you have a template here with them. That's a pretty good template, right? So when you start on the next property, doesn't mean it's going to turn out exactly the same, but there's at least a reference point between you and them that will naturally, inevitably be the thing that everybody will kind of mentally look towards and say, how can we replicate this kind of a concept because it worked well last time? And so it's almost like a head start on the next deal with them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, great work. Congratulations on your new
Thank you.
Triplex Plus, really? Triplex Plus.
I call it the 3.5 unit.
Yeah. The 1,500 feet is a ginormous garage.
It is. It's huge.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, congratulations and great job.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. My interview, my case study conversation with Tom. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed conducting it in the first place, and then getting to re-listen to it and rewatch it again as we make this episode is just so cool, so rewarding. I'm so excited for Tom and everything. I know that this will be a springboard for him down the road too, because the first time, when you learn something new, the first time you apply it does a huge job in terms of solidifying belief in your mind. And so now the process repeats itself even stronger and stronger, probably even faster and faster too. That's it for today's episode of Racking Up Rentals. So again, show notes can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E205. Please take a second to subscribe. But if you can also, this just has to take a second, rate and review this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you can make a rating, it is so helpful to me and to us, the rest of my team. And we are so appreciative every time we see one of those come through. So thank you so much for taking just a second to do that. Did you know also that we have a Facebook group for us thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs? It's true. It's called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders. We'd love to have you join us there. It's a place where we get to hang out together and talk about the things that really kind of honestly only thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs talk about. So it's a different vibe than your typical real estate investor Facebook group or otherwise community. So just go to group.thoughtfulre.com. The magic of the internet will take you right there, or you can just search Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders in Facebook. I will see you in the next episode next Thursday. Until then, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off.